Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. So tonight I realized that Mix 6 task is totally new to me, and honestly I suspect that it may be new to some of you. And so tonight we're really lucky to have a couple of Mix 6 tasks. I swear I practiced that 10 times. A couple of experts on Mixed 6 tasks, and those are Vicki Carter and Tony Record. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make tough-to-teach, tough-to-learn concepts accessible to all my students. Hold on. There we go. Vicki recently retired after teaching high school math for 46 years at West Florence High School. 46 years. You heard me correctly. Vicki is a T-Cube national instructor and received the T-Cube Leadership Award in 2015. She served on TI-Nspire authoring teams and has presented at many national, state, and local conferences. She's a former co-chair of the AP Calculus Development Committee. She served as an exam leader at the AP Calculus reading in the summer of 2022. And has also worked with the College Board to produce several AP daily lessons in both AB and BC Calculus. Vicki, it's great to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm proud to be here.
And Tony has been a math teacher at Avon High School, a suburb of Indianapolis, for the past 34 years. For the past 24 of those, Tony has primarily taught AP Calculus and has worked to build his school's AP Calculus program to nearly 300 students. In addition to being a T-Cube regional instructor, Tony is an active consultant with the College Board, having produced several AP Live and AP Daily lessons and trained teachers in 27 states and serving as a question leader at the reading. He's authored the AP Calculus AB curriculum for the KIPP charter school system across the United States and has written several test prep materials for various print and online publishers such as Propel Enterprises, Albert.io, and Get5.com. Currently, he lives in Avon, Indiana with his wife and 2 teenage children, and in his spare time, he loves to play guitar and is active with the Central Indiana's Hendricks Civic Theater, having appeared in several productions. So, Tony, it's great to have you with us as well.
Thanks, Mike. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you guys tonight.
So, Tony, let's keep the ball rolling. Would you mind talking about our agenda for tonight?
No, not at all. We are going to officially unveil this idea of the Mixed 6 task. Vicki and I are really excited. We think that this is the first time that they've ever really been talked about on American soil. And so we'll kind of give you a little bit of a geographical perspective about where these things are coming from in just a moment. We're going to talk about their various components. What is it that really comprises a Mix 6? And I think we're going to show you 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we've got 6 examples. How appropriate is that? 6 examples of some Mix 6 that we have provided for you tonight. And we will then certainly give you plenty of access to several of them that have been written across various subjects. And we're going to entice you all to join us on this journey and perhaps contribute some of these Mix 6 on your own. And we'll give you some suggestions on how to do that and how that you can reach us so that we can upload that so that the whole community can use this. And rumor has it that there will be a drawing after the webinar, as always.
Thanks so much, Tony. And Vicki, will you talk through our expected outcomes for tonight?
So we hope we will be able to convey to you what a Mix 6 task looks like. We're going to relate it to Bloom's taxonomy and talk about that a little bit. Hopefully we will share with you, and you will be able to remember and find some Mix 6 that have already been created and be able to use them or change them a little bit if it suits your classroom better to modify the activities that are already there. And then, as Tony has already mentioned, we're going to challenge you to start writing a few of these and help post them we've got a Google Drive, and we've got lots of things shared there, but we want some more. So we hope that this will be exciting enough to you that you will want to share some of these with us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vicki. We're expecting a large crowd tonight, so your audio is all muted. Feel free to send any questions to Vicky or Tony using the Q&A window on the right side of your screen. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are going to be using that chat window tonight to kind of engage you and get some thoughts and responses from you. So we will be using that chat window on the right side of your screen. Just a reminder, whenever you send chats, you have an option of who you send it to. And ideally, you want to probably send your chat to everyone. And that way, everyone, the three panelists, everyone else joining us tonight can see it as well. Again, we do have a large crowd. So as a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we're going to provide links to the certificate of attendance as well as the documents at the end of the webinar. And I know, I just want to reiterate that Tony and Vicky put together a lot of documents, and they're going to share the link for those documents as well at the end. So let's get ready. Tony, let me give you control. Feel free to share your screen.
All right, we'll do this. Well, have you heard about a mixed six task? Vicky, what do you have to say to open us up here?
Well, I was teaching 3 classes of AP Calculus last year, and in March, I was always looking at, I know it sounds strange, but after 46 years, I was constantly looking for new ways to engage my students and to interact with them. And of course, with our COVID year, there was some makeup ground that we had to do with preparation for calculus. So I happened to be on Twitter on Saturday because that's about the only time that I can really look at Twitter and look for some educational advice or things like that. And I happened to stumble upon a post by a man named Ben Gordon. Never met him. Not sure I know what he looks like. I am going to put in the chat his Twitter handle so that if you want to go in there and look at what he posted, you can. Most of the things that he had were these items that he called mixed six tasks, and they were for middle grades. And I got to looking at them and I thought, whoa, this is perfect for AP Calculus review of those concepts that are so important for them to understand. And I had also read Peter, and I'm going to say this and it's going to be horribly Southern, so it's probably mispronounced, Lilladal's book the summer prior to that. And I had been really um, I've been a little overwhelmed with trying to write some of the thin slicing activities that he refers to use with the vertical boards. And we were being very successful with the vertical surfaces in my classroom, the white boards, but the thin slicing was difficult because there weren't a lot of activities and resources for calculus students. And I happened to think, well, this might actually work really well too. Okay, the mystery. What the heck are these things? So Tony, show us some screenshots.
And
And we know you really can't read these, so
we'll get you a better look a little bit later as we kind of dissect into each individual one. But yeah, you've got 4 different ones from Algebra 2, and I think you've got a trio of ones here from AP Calculus. But I think we did a pretty good job later on of showing you one from each of the main disciplines of mathematics from Algebra 1 up to BC Calculus. So yes, we'll definitely take a little bit closer look at these. And it's kind of exciting because I teased Vicky earlier about the fact that these seem to originate across the pond in the United Kingdom. And we're going to share with you some research that surfaced within the past 10 years that really speak to the components of a task like this and how that just dovetails with Lilladal's thinking classrooms and some research that has been done in this country. And then I don't know about you guys, but sometimes whenever, a grizzled veteran, like those of us that have taught for X number of years, where X is like greater than 20 maybe, you start getting skeptical when you see this research, because we know how education just sort of goes in a cycle. And all of a sudden we circle back to something that we didn't think was very effective 20 years ago, and why are we doing it again? But I have to admit, Vicky and I are really on board with the way that these activities are constructed, and we're just really excited about it. And I teased her, it's like Vicky, I think, brought these across the pond. I mean, we're in the month of November. Thanksgiving's coming up. It's like the Mayflower for mixed six. So we thank Vicki for that, for sure. I was going to just spend a moment here before I turn it back to Vicki. I don't want to turn this into a dreaded memory of days gone past with your educational psychology courses, but for the most part, I think everybody in this room who's had teacher training has probably been exposed to Bloom's taxonomy, which in 1956 looked a little something like this. And Vicki and I, both talked to each other. This is what we were exposed to in our undergraduate training, right? A few years ago.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden in 2001, things changed. And what's really remarkable is for those of you who may be teaching 20 years or less, which 20 years as a veteran in the classroom, you have a completely different perspective of Bloom's taxonomy. So you probably have seen these words or words very similar to that, right? And it's interesting because in 2001, what was really different? Well, it's all about the verbs, right? So I guess for us, those of us that have been teaching 20 years or more, we've been doing it all wrong, right? We've been thinking about the other words for Bloom's taxonomy. But besides that, we probably enact the verb idea at some point anyway when we do our teaching, because teaching is a very active, very, very, very kind of receptive kind of endeavor. And so the way that we can look at these new Bloom's words and apply it to this activity are ways that we always want our students to be thinking in our classroom. And this is a great synopsis that was put together by some American research here at the University of Arkansas, teaching innovation and pedagogical support. And so, down at that lower level, we want students to certainly recognize and recall facts. But goodness gracious, if that's all we do in mathematics, we are certainly dooming our students to failure because they're not really doing a lot of free thinking. We want them to understand what those facts mean and then obviously applying those facts, rules, concepts, and ideas. And then things get to be really interesting, right? Breaking down information into component parts. I always thought that one of the reasons why calculus is such a difficult course for students and even some advanced topics in pre-calculus is because we're really working on this analyzed level of Bloom's taxonomy. We have to really dig deep into these ideas and see which one belongs where and what this one can do for us, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we can climb that ladder more. We can start judging the value of information and ideas, which I'm going to tell you, I think Vicki and I both agree our favorite part of the mixed six activity lies with this layer of Bloom's taxonomy. And of course, the creation part, the combining parts to make a new whole, which, hey, we can turn that loose on you because we know that you guys are going to have the ability to create some of these, and we're excited to kind of share that. So Vicki is going to talk about the specific anatomy of a mixed six activity.
So when I saw what Gordon had done, Ben Gordon had done, I decided to sort of focus on 6 different tasks, which is where the mix 6 came from. And the 6 that I came up with are what you see here. So Tony and I kind of talked about Bloom's taxonomy and how it correlates to this. So factual recall, obviously, recalling and recognizing and recalling facts, that's pretty much a given. But then the next one, carry out a procedure. So when I was looking at some samples, I thought, okay, this is sort of a first step. Can I actually apply some of these facts that I've learned and carry out not a simple, but not a difficult procedure? So understanding what the facts mean, we decided that kind of fits in this particular piece of the mix 6. And then we have the classify a mathematical object. A lot of these are like matching and which one belongs here. And I mean, I've written some with Venn diagrams, different things like that. So we sort of felt that the breaking down information into component parts fit in this particular part of the task. And then my favorite, I really love the 4th one, prove, show, justify. Um, I will say that when I started writing these, the samples that we have to share with you are very heavy in calculus because that's where I started. But we're starting to branch out this fall and contacting other teachers and trying to get some more activities in all our levels of mathematics so that we can share them with you. And I'm going to be honest with you, I want these things shared. I do not want to put them on a pay to get site. I want everybody to have access to them, enjoy them, and just, have fun with your students. I think you're going to be amazed when you actually work some of these with your students. Then we get to extend a concept. I really like the format because I kind of thought of it being a go deeper than what number two did. Number two was carry out a procedure, but now we need to really, can students do, I mean, I can say it this way, a harder problem, not necessarily, but something that just takes a little more of a thinking process. So we felt that applying the facts, rules and concepts and ideas here belonged for extend a concept. And then one of my other favorites is critique a fallacy, judging the value of information and ideas. And if you're an educator, you have a plethora of ways students do problems incorrectly. I am going to just tell you a little side note on this one. When I was writing these mixed six for my calculus students, and they just overwhelmed me because I actually wrote one over that weekend when I first read the well, I was reading Twitter and I sent it to Tony, I think on a Sunday night. I'll let him tell you what he thought. But I took it into school Monday and shared it with my BC class because it was on a concept we had done maybe a month before. Next thing I knew, they were at the whiteboards making a list of all the mixed sixes that they wanted. I don't know if I've ever had students actually begging for work quite the way they did. I was a little overwhelmed. But and what I was doing with the little critique of fallacy is I was putting like anonymous names in there, like Sam, Joe, Paul, Sally. And they started going, no, you've got to include us. Our names have to be there. So if you see some strange names in some of the samples in calculus, it's because they're my students.
Yeah, and I've done the same thing. In a lot of times, Vicki and I have already spoken about this, but when we show you the Google Drive in a little bit, and I find a really great mix six that one of our friends have written, and then some of you are actually, Kim Thomas, I know is watching today. She's written several of these, and we appreciate her contributions. And I'll take a mix six that somebody may have written, and the one thing that I look at first is the critique of fallacy, because that is so customizable, because we've all seen the mistakes that our students make, and that's one of the first things that I might make an adjustment to make it more suitable for my classroom. And my kids are the same way. They don't want to be that kid who helps create the mix six fallacy bottom right corner. So it's sort of a badge of, I don't know if it's a badge of honor or of a
Yeah.
badge of dishonor, maybe, but it's interesting. Maybe Vicki should use the names of my kids and I'll use the names of her kids her in the past that she's had. So how about we take a look at some specific mix six activities? We'll try to linger on each of these slides a little bit so that all of you can just kind of get an idea. um, we we probably don't have enough time for you to start working out all six of the problems, so don't get too enamored with it, but we promise we're going to show you exactly where you can find these. And just within 45 minutes time, you can start downloading these to your own drive and have them and even edit them if you need to. Vicki, I'll start with this one if that's okay, because I thought Algebra 1 would be a first nice place to start. And
Yes.
I will be honest that I have been in a calculus world for many, many years now. I have not taught anything but advanced placement calculus now for about 12 years. And as Vicki said, our first thought was to kind of implement these in calculus courses. We thought, well, wait a minute, we've got to share this outside beyond calculus for sure. And so I just simply shared the idea of a mix six with a colleague at my school. And he's a good teacher, 4 years experience, not that grizzled veteran that we had mentioned before. And he was able to come up with this in just one night, that he planned on using in his Algebra 1 class over quadratic functions. And I thought, Tim Titzer, if he's watching it on demand, thanks so much for this. I think you did a good job. Many more I know are coming from you, but this sort of gives you a bit of an idea. And the progression is so Bloom's oriented. And I love that this particular classification shows a matching situation. And, we've probably all have assigned work that contains these components, I'm sure, but to contain them all within this type of environment is kind of exciting. And the fact that it's not terribly daunting in terms of how much work is going to be placed upon the student. And I think the sky's the limit in terms of how you can assign these. I've actually this year been using them as more of a response to instruction after a common formative assessment has been given in my class if students are struggling. And I can very quickly write that critique of fallacy very quickly the night before that I actually assign this to students. And so, yep,
And I've talked,
go ahead.
yeah, and I've talked to other teachers that have, kind of seen some of these, and they're thinking about, well, one of the things that I could do is use it as a warm-up question the day after a lesson to see what they remember or what they gathered from their homework assignment and might be learning, or use it as an exit ticket. Like I said, I used it, tried to use it a good bit for the vertical boards with my students in random groups. One of the things I did do, and I'll just mention it with this one because it might be easy to kind of think about it with this particular one. I would let the students, I'd give every student a handout. And I like this format because we've made them all one pagers, as far as a single front of the page, everything's there. There are a few that, like, look at number 5, that they may not have quite enough room to do all the work. They might have to turn over to the back, but they've got space to do it, and you're not having to run like a back and front and 5-page document or anything like that. So one of the things I would do is tell my students to work individually on 1 through 3, because I feel like that is the learning they should know at that point. If it's after a lesson, if it's warm up, if it's exit ticket, that kind of a thing. And then I would say I did popsicle sticks for drawing my random groups, but I draw my popsicle sticks, and then they'd go to the boards and they'd take their paper with them, and then they would discuss. And usually my groups were 3, is kind of was my preference. But they would discuss their responses to 1 through 3, help everybody correct theirs if anybody noticed something was not totally correct. And then they would do 4 through 6 as groups and put the responses on the boards for me to walk around and kind of ask questions about what they're doing and see how they're progressing. So it worked really well with the vertical boards and the random grouping that way.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and as far as the formatting is concerned, I mean, what we've shown here is one that's got a little bit more of a splash of color, which is good for presentation purposes. Of course, we have them in the normal black and white that most often you would be using to photocopy. So you can always doctor them up and add that particular color flare if you'd like. And I just wanted to also point out that it might seem a little bit stretched on your screen, and that would simply be due to being able to fit the entire thing using as much space in the PowerPoint slide so that you can see. I'll flip over to the next one. I'll just talk about this briefly, and then Vicki, I'll probably let you talk about some of the more of these. But this is one of the ones that Vicki and I, unfortunately, we can't credit the author on this one because we were really looking for a geometry mix 6 because neither of us have taught geometry since like the 80s. Maybe is that right? I think, and we were like,
Yeah,
wow,
the early 80s.
early. And so I found this on Ben Gordon's Twitter feed, and whether he may have been the author, we don't know. So I'm sorry that I can't credit the author. I certainly would with this, but angles of a polygon, we wanted to give you geometry teachers a little bit of love and show you how you can implement, figures and whatnot, and really use those 6 boxes quite well, even in a geometry environment. And I have to be honest, if the Google Drive starts populating with a lot of these, I will be really interested to see a lot of the geometry ones because they kind of intrigue me here a bit. So, Vicki, the next two I think are yours, and they're not very old, are they? They're pretty new.
No, they're like from the last few
Mm-hmm.
days. So I knew that graphing exponential functions was a topic in most of the algebra 2 classes. Usually it extends into pre-calculus, but I wanted this to be focused on sort of that algebra 2 level. So there is no base of E anywhere in this. So that if you are only introducing bases of like 2, 10, 3, a half, those kinds of things, this is a very doable activity. The I mean, I hope it's sufficient because I haven't taught algebra 2 in probably 20 plus years either, but I was just trying to think of some things that they take with them to calculus that they have either errors in their thinking or they're not fully grounded in their conceptual understanding of exponential functions. And that's a really big topic in calculus. So I thought with the background that I want them to have, I would hope they could do this. This is primarily focused on transformations and you're just using that exponential form, hence a little bit toward domain and range and thinking about the horizontal asymptote, translations, equivalent expressions, and things of that nature. So at any rate, so I threw myself in the critique of fallacy, and actually that's my daughter, Casey. She's way past algebra 2 at this point. I will say that Ben called it critique. Now I can't think of what he called it, but it was it was criticized. That was it. Criticize a fallacy. And this past year, I did a couple of presentations for Texas Instruments on critique, not criticize. And I got to thinking about how powerful the word or how negative the word criticize is and how powerful the word critique might be. And so I did change that to critique a fallacy. And I've really liked that, especially after doing those presentations. Let me just kind of comment here because these first two have been no calculator. We know we're doing a Texas Instrument webinar. So one of the big things is when you start to write one of these, and we'll mention this again in just a little bit, is it going to be a calculator activity or is it going to be a no calculator activity? Or are some of them need a calculator, don't need a calculator? So one of the things I like to think about is what are the skills I need them to know? And if they're things like what you're seeing here, if they're to me very basic, straightforward concepts, they really don't need to pick a calculator up to do this. Now, am I going to slap their hand if they say, I've got to graph these to be able to figure it out? And I'm going to say, no, it's okay. But for the most part, I think students should be able to do this particular one without a calculator. Now, we've got some calculator ones to show you coming up.
Yep. And I think here is the newest one of all. Am I right?
Yes, this one happened yesterday and today. So I was kind of stuck on exponential. So I thought, okay, exponential models would be really good for the use of the calculator. So I sort of thought, okay, I want this to be pre-calculus, so I'm going to introduce the number E a little bit in some of these problems, which doesn't show up until number 4. And then I thought, well, I really would love as a calculus teacher for my pre-calc students to have been exposed to logistic growth, at least the form of a logistic growth problem. And so that was my extended concept. And I thought, well, okay, well, since I've introduced it, let's put it with the critique of fallacy. So maybe you're also noticing the different forms that classify a mathematical object are coming in. Like I said, some are matching, some are just identifying. Somewhere in there, I've got some Venn diagrams and some others. I don't think we have any of those samples, but I just really like the different features that you could use with the classification piece.
Yeah, and this one was so timely for me because I am going to be teaching logistics, differential equation, growth and decay tomorrow in my BC class. And I thought, well, this is absolutely perfect to implement, even though there's not necessarily calculus on this particular activity, but it certainly would serve as a great introduction into this idea before we move into the calculus concepts. And then I got to thinking even deeper about, I don't know if you guys can believe this, but there are calculus students across the country that are lacking some algebra concepts. It's amazing, right? Who'd have thought, right? And I'm sure that there are Algebra 2 students in our classrooms that we think have some weaknesses in some Algebra 1 content and so on. And so what's really nice about these is that you can always have these in your back pocket, and you could pull out an Algebra 1 for your Algebra 2 or pre-calc class, especially for a group of students who might be struggling with a particular idea. So they're so versatile in that you don't just have to use the pre-calculus ones for your pre-calculus students. The next one is probably one of the initial, if not the initial one. Now, I have to admit, before I let Vicky talk about this, because this is her baby, but I liked it so much that I call it Avonized it. I put the logo of our school, and I use this immediately with my students. When she and I first talked about this, it was back in the early spring, I believe, late winter, early spring, and I was just starting to put together a plan to review for the advanced placement exam, and I knew that chain rule was a part of uh, the curriculum that we definitely needed to review. And then Vicky mentioned Venn diagram. She's got it right here in the classify. So I really like this one, Vicky.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think this is one of the first ones. I might have done the product rule before this one, just as but I was doing several on derivative rules. I remember the implicit differentiation was a tough one to do, but I think there is one on that. Chain rule is something students forget, just like somebody mentioned. Is there a factoring one yet? No, we don't have a factoring one for the algebra yet, but I hope somebody will write one. Because students, we can talk all we want about, it's a topic that is de-emphasized, but you're not going to make it through calculus if you can't factor. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And, there might even be a day, if I were still teaching, that I'd have to give the factoring mix 6 to my calculus students just as a quick review, like Tony was saying with the logistic growth as a, preceding talking about logistic differential equations. This one I thought turned out really well. Some of them I'm a little, I need to revise, but this one I think has done well, and the students were able to get a good review out of it. And this is, so the prove, show, justify. So this is a show that the derivative is correct. So essentially, it's kind of a self-checking. You do the derivative, are you going to get this answer? It's simplified. So that's one of the things I really like about some of the problems that you can put in the number 4 slot is, do I have to simplify? Well, if you ever take a multiple choice test, you're going to have to find the right answer, and it's probably going to be simplified. So that is something that you need to practice. So in this case, after they go through their chain rule process, they do have to combine some terms a little bit in order to get the answer in the way that I wrote it, so that they can verify that they found the correct derivative.
And then I guess we'll cap it all off at the top of the ladder with AP Calc BC. Now, we'd also don't want to dismiss the fact that there are other math courses, certainly statistics, advanced placement statistics, even a finite math or a discrete math course could certainly lend themselves to the implementation of the Mix 6, but we'll call this our capstone, at least for Calculus BC. And this one was written by, our friend Aaron Timmons from Advanced Kentucky. He wanted to get in on the action and wrote what really a very difficult to teach, difficult to learn topic throughout BC Calculus, working with polar. And so I think he did a really good job with this. And we have to laugh. This one says, almost no calculator, almost. I guess our box number 4 is going to require the calculators there. So yeah, you could have kind of fun with that and use icons to denote exactly which parts the student should use a calculator on. So you can mix them up a little bit. You can mix the Mix 6. So hopefully that gives you a decent look at 6 different ones. Like I said, we are at the very end of the show. We are going to make sure that you walk away knowing exactly where to find them, and I think we've made it really easy to make that happen. And we're reluctant. We didn't want to share that with you at the beginning, and you all know why, right? We would just lose your attention completely probably at that point. So I guess we'll just talk a little bit, Vicki, maybe about the research. We've got several slides here that were taken from a very prominent event. This event was 11 years ago in the UK. It was the Proceedings of the Day conference that was performed at the Institute of Education in London on March 11th, 2011, and just several um, mathematics education experts convened there all across the UK. Some were in Western Europe that made the trip across the English Channel, and they really, shared a lot of great insight with research that they had done, research that they piggybacked on other research, and we really found some very interesting quotes. And like I said, we don't want to sit and read all of these to you. If you're so excited about reading these, you can always watch this again on demand and pause, right? Or we actually have this research housed in the Dropbox so that you can read some of these documents. But Vicki, we saw a few slides that had some really interesting quotes here towards the end, right? And so
Yes.
I'll kind of move to those. This one here talks about a mixed economy. Learners are given a variety of tasks. Well, I can see a Mix 6 accomplishing that for sure, right? And then, Vicki, you want to read this one?
Yes, so I thought it was really important. I mean, and it also was quite fascinating to me that the research was actually done with first semester calculus students in universities across Ireland, England, Scotland, various places there. Um, these authors designed some tasks. The article doesn't exactly show you what these tasks were, but they included routine tasks, the kinds of things that you expect your students to be able to model and do after watching you do a problem, the kind of the I do, you do, we do kind of a thing. But then they went into these thinking tasks. And I think this is where it really piggybacks on what Peter talks about in his building a thinking classroom in mathematics, is that we've got to get beyond that doing these routine tasks and to getting these students to think about mathematics and become a mathematical thinker. Um, and so they would give these students the routine task plus some thinking task. And then at the end of the study, they actually analyze the results of some problems that students worked through in this first semester calculus class, but they also polled the students. And I thought this was very powerful. So that's the next slide,
Yeah,
Tony, is that the students in the study seem to have matured in their understanding of the purposes of the task. So they began to understand what the purpose, why are we doing these different things? And they understood that those non-routine, I mean, they could recognize the non-routine task, that they knew that they were challenged by them, and that they actually could talk about, hey, it made me think. My students in my classroom basically did the same thing. They said, you're making me think about this stuff. And they were always challenged by the 4, 5, and 6. The 6 they usually would pick up on a little quicker, but sometimes the 4 and 5 questions were real challenging for the students. And like I said before, when students start begging you for materials, you're getting somewhere with them and helping them to understand what they need to do. Um, there is a question over in the chat. I'll get to that one in just a minute about what format was used, but essentially I write all of mine in Word, and I'm really wacky. I write it with the answer key, and then I delete the answers, and I have the original document. That's just the way I kind of like to operate it. It's kind of like making out the answer key to your test before you give the test to the students. It's always a good idea. So that's sort of the operation that I did. But we'll show you in just a minute. We're going to actually go to the folder and show you the formats that we have in there.
And then here's Pointon and Sangwin's adoptive and adaptive reasoning, right? That
Yes.
the research had mentioned. Now, Pointon and Sangwin, again, are a couple of longtime, educational leaders in the UK, and they started to think this way back in the early 2000s. And I'm like, wow, this is an idea that now is almost 20 years old, and again, it's not like it's utilizing something that's so foreign. Bloom's taxonomy it's been around for so long. It's now we just got a really neat way to really sharpen the edges of it and really apply it to the mathematics that we teach, and a really good concrete example in these mixed six that make that happen. And so, you see 8 different things here in this table, right, that have been sort of consolidated into the mix 6. We only have so many boxes, right, Vicky? That would.
Right, and mixed 6 sounds a whole lot better than mixed 8.
That's true. That's very, very true. But you can see constructing an instance. I mean, that's a pretty high level procedure. A student that might make their own problem. If they want to write their own mix 6, like what you guys are going to do, you're certainly going to be working on that particular level. So, you'd asked about the template. This is pretty much what you would have access to, right, Vicky? You may not see
Yes.
the colored version. What we're going to keep it very plain Jane in black and white, gray tones, and then you can always modify it because it will be I think we have both a Word doc and just a normal Google Doc. So you could either work
Yes.
off of either one, right? And
Yes.
and then
So, Tony,
Mhm.
let me
Sure.
talk a little bit here about this. So, I think one of the big things is deciding, and you can decide later, but whether you are going to be writing a calculator or no calculator or hardly any calculator activity. Factual recall. So, I just kind of want to address each one of these briefly. So, give you some things that I had to think about when I started creating these. Once you decide on your topic, I like to think about, well, what's that basic information that I need them to know? I don't know if you recall, but with the one that I did with the exponential functions, I thought, to me, it's really important for them to understand the form of an exponential function and what the domain and range would be. And so that was sort of my factual recall there. So that's what I try to think about whenever I'm creating those. Typically, with the carry out a procedure and extend a concept, which are in the middle column, I kind of work those together. So I mentioned earlier, carry out a procedure. I want it to be fairly straightforward, but give them some opportunity to, try a problem or two. Extend a concept. I want it to be more challenging. I want it to make them have to stop and think a little bit. Classifying, oh my goodness, you can find all kinds of different things. I actually do go back to Ben Gordon's examples sometimes, since most of his is kind of middle school level, but it gives you a lot of resources of different ideas of ways that you can do classification. And maybe somebody can come up with some really good creative ones. Someone just asked, could vocabulary be a part of factual recall? Absolutely. I think I have written some of those where it's just, what is this? Fill in the blanks with vocabulary, or maybe even an equation, which would be sort of a, morph version of vocabulary. Um, the, Again, prove, show, justify. I mean, goodness, there's so many things there that you can do. You can, I'm thinking about proofs. I know it's also a de-emphasized topic in geometry, but I think this would be a good place to throw some in a little bit. But show and justify, those are fairly easy to come up with. Uh, and just, you think about, I want them to be, the students to be a little bit challenged with the prove, show, justify, but I want them to also be able to catch an error perhaps and see where they might be doing something wrong. Um, Critique a fallacy. Tony, what was your remark that you made last night when we were kind of talking through this?
Oh, it's my favorite. I mean, I can't wait for my students to take a formative assessment because I'm going to be scouring it for the common mistakes, and I'll even keep a little tally sheet, of which mistake seems to be the most prominent, so that because I'm thinking if my students are, inclined to make this particular mistake in 2022, 2023, it seems like no matter what I do to try to remedy that, that same mistake kind of comes down the pike a little bit later. So I don't know if that
He
was it.
confessed to pulling his phone out occasionally and taking pictures of some mistakes students made.
I did.
That's a good idea. You've got a recorded history of it.
That's exactly
All right,
right.
let's show them some, Tony.
All right. So I guess this is the moment you've all been waiting for here, right? So, where is it that you can find the Mix 6 activities? So um, you could use the URL below, and we think that this is probably a pretty easy URL to remember. So you could jot it down or take a photo with your phone. If you want super quick access to it, you've got the QR code there, but I got a feeling that we're going to lose you now, right? For the remaining 10 or so minutes that we're going to be on now that the cat's out of the bag. But we can also put that link in the chat, I believe, right?
I'm typing it right now.
Okay. And I do not believe it's case sensitive on the Mix 6 it's a tiny URL, but I can't speak for sure on that. But I do think it's not case sensitive. So why don't I do this now, Vicky? I'm going to drag in this slide. So you don't have to go there right now, you guys. So good, it was not case sensitive here. Thanks. So if we drag in the landing page of the Google Drive, now remember, just not too long ago, all that existed was this calculus page. And the calculus page, we will say, or the calculus folder, is certainly fleshed out the most. And I'll click on that to kind of give you an idea, to kind of show you, well, gosh, what these other pages might ultimately look like. But the calculus page is certainly, it's got its own organizational structure that's very akin to the College Board course and exam description that exists for all advanced placement courses. So for those of you that are calculus teachers, we will have them categorized in the various units so that you can find things very, very simply. But we would hope to do something somewhat similar, right, in the other particular folders, but we won't call it chapter 1, chapter 2, because you all are using different texts and resources. And so Vicki, we're just going to plan on creating folders with certain topic names very generally, like polygons, triangles, things of that nature. So it should make it fairly easy for you to find things. And I guess we want to show you this folder here, this documents in the folder here, which we've already had some folks kind of working on in this folder not too terribly long ago this morning. So eventually we'll do this. Within each one of the subject folders, we can cross-reference what actual activity has been written, right? And they're all linked, I believe, right? And
Yes.
we can even, as far as the calculus is concerned, we kind of cross-reference with it with a particular
Open that one, Tony,
topic.
because that is a calculator document just to
Which one is it?
the contextual applications with derivatives and integrals. I also want them to see what's available.
Let's see. If I want to open this, can I do this?
I'm not real sure.
Well, I know I can find it by going into the, there it is. I clicked on the wrong part. You got to click on the
Okay.
drop-down bubble.
So what I hope is that for every document that we create or anyone creates, there is a Word document, a PDF of the Word document that contains the Mix 6, and then there's a Word document that contains the key and a PDF. So if you like what you see, you could just print the PDF and not have to worry about it. If you want to modify it, basically what you're going to have to do, since this isn't a Google folder, you're going to have to right click and download, and then you could modify it. And we want this to be available to anybody. You can do what you want. If you think you come up with a great alternate version of one and want to share it, we'll put some alternate ones up here. We've already done that with a few other ones that I think there's one on slope fields or something that we have a couple of versions that kind of go different directions. So I think that's great. And we want it to be shared. We want everybody to have access to it that wants access to it.
Sure. And don't worry about the naming convention. I mean, call it something that obviously, makes sense, like at least its subject matter and its um, what course it is, I should say, and what topic it's presenting. Because Vicki and I can always go in and make it kind of consistent and format that. But yeah, like I said, the calculus one is very well fleshed out. But we hope to do some of the similar things with the other disciplines as well. And hey, we've got statistics in there. I don't know if there's too many in that one at this particular point.
So nothing there.
For you statistics folks, hey, you've got something there that you can use. And if you're wondering, okay, well, where do you all start here? Well, I would
That's
say
the
that
next
if
screen.
you,
Somebody just asked.
yeah, oh, was it? Okay. I would say if you have Microsoft Office and you're like, hey, I'm going to write one that's, let's go with calculator, right? It's a T-cubed webinar, right? So you would just simply click on this, or you likely would already have this downloaded. And there it is, you guys, all blank, ready for you to start typing and enjoying and whatnot. And again, we're not going to worry about what kind of software that you use for equation editing. Use whatever is comfortable for you. Um, and that is precisely why we have the PDF option, because some of us that might be using, say, math type, other folks might have trouble rendering that on their particular machines. And so the PDF is all going to kind of keep us on the same page. And then the beautiful thing about this is that you can always take those docs. Vicki and I have been very adamant in our careers about providing both document and PDFs for folks, because she and I have probably typed and retyped many PDFs into doc form throughout our career for everyone here in the webinar. And so you always have that ability to edit. Like I said, if you want the critique of fallacy to be a little bit more akin to what your students are doing, you can make those particular adjustments for that downloaded activity that you found, and then of course save it. Don't worry about re-uploading it, right? Just keep it for yourself, because we can just use this as a springboard for finding a beginning place to start for a certain topic in a certain subject, and then catering it to our own particular needs. So
All
okay.
right, so we have a question about what's on our last slide, Tony.
Okay, yeah, boy, we're doing good with this. Let me see, gotta get rid of this. Move this out of the way. There we go. All right. So what do we want you guys to do? This is your homework, right? You didn't know that you signed up for this. So your homework, we just really do need your help, not just us, but several, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mathematics teachers across the United States and for the country, for the world, for that matters. We need your help, because what you can do is write one of these up as soon as you feel like you've got something that is worth being posted. Just send it to either one of us. You don't have to send it to both of us. Either one is fine. I guess Vicki's name is first, so she'll get the bulk of them, right? But she's retired. That's okay.
I'm retired.
You could put both of us on the email. That's fine. And then we'll do any cleaning up. Not so much editing the content per se, but we'll go ahead and post it, and we'll let people start using it. And the only thing that we do ask is that if you send us at least the doc form, we can make the PDF, but maybe in case your doc form is going to have difficulty rendering on our machines, if you could send us both the doc and the PDF, that might make things a little bit easier on us. And as always, solutions are encouraged. Solutions are certainly encouraged. And it's perfectly fine if, say, something's posted and there is an error in the solutions. I can tell you, I have a full curriculum for AP Calculus that I openly share with teachers across the country, and man, have I made a lot of mistakes on that. And I embrace it. I'm like, hey, if I have a teacher out there that finds my mistake, that's one less mistake that my students are going to see in my solution keys. So I'm certainly I have no problem with people finding mistakes with the things that I do. So hopefully that answered all the questions. I kind of missed some of them going on in the chat.
No, I think
so.
that did.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody posted a link to Gordon, Ben Gordon's things. There were several questions that I've answered about, how I use them, and I'm gonna say what I basically typed. Whatever seems to fit best for your students, use it that way. If you feel like individual, take it home, do it in groups. However, it seems like it could help your students, feel free to use it in any way that you could.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with my principal. He walked in my classroom and he was asking, how I was doing. what I had going on. I mentioned the webinar tonight, what we were going to speak about, and my principal's a social studies teacher by trade, and he was really excited with these, and wanted to really start talking about it a little bit more in our building, and how maybe they can be applied in other disciplines outside of mathematics. So that was kind of exciting. So Michael, I think we're gonna hand it back over to you if that's okay.
I'm ready.
I,
Thanks so much. So we are excited about everything that you might have learned or picked up or had questions or comments about tonight. Feel free to reach out to us on any of the major social media platforms to, again, ask any questions or share any comments. We'd love to hear from you there. As promised, one lucky winner tonight is receiving a free TI graphing calculator of their choice. And tonight's lucky winner is Cassandra Bradley. So Cassandra, congratulations. We hope you're excited and you've been thinking about what graphing calculator you're going to pick. We'll be sending you an email in a couple days to get some information from you. But Cassandra, congratulations. To receive a certificate of attendance, go ahead and click the link in the chat window. Also, it's the link for the documents that were used tonight, primarily by me. The really important documents link, I think Tony and Vicki shared earlier. If you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate of attendance. If you need to get a hold of us for any reason after the webinar, give us a call, 1-800-TI-CARES, or drop us an email, ti-cares@ti.com. We have one more webinar this fall. We're going to take next week off and we'll be back the week after that. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with our final webinar of the fall series here. And we're almost done planning the spring, but we still have some spots left as far as things that we can include. So we really hope you share your thoughts in the post-webinar survey. If there's something that you'd like to see or see more of, feel free to let us know. It really does help us plan those future online events. Huge thanks to Vicki and Tony for everything they created and shared with everyone tonight. I just looking through the chat window saw lots of really excited to use this tomorrow. It's very applicable for a lot of teachers pretty quickly. So thanks so much to the both of you for putting this together.
it was a pleasure. It's always a pleasure working with Vicki, and I think it's just absolutely fantastic that she, even with just a few months left to teach in her teaching career back in the spring, saw how important this was to bring into the culture of American mathematics in the secondary classroom. And she's not done yet. She's still got a lot to offer. So Vicki, thank you.
You're quite welcome. I enjoyed doing this tonight.
Hey, thanks to everyone for joining us. Again, we'll take a break next week, but we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Stay safe and have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.